Okay, so welcome back to another live stream. Shout out to the Urbans. Today, of course, as you can see from the title, we will be talking about Prada Spring Summer 25 menswear. So how are you guys doing? If you guys saw the show, what did you think about the show before I jump in? And what have been your thoughts in general about, menswear fashion week? How's it been? What shows have you liked? All that sort of stuff. See what people are saying in the comments. Tosin's on a lunch break. Interesting. No, it's not pre-recorded. This is me live in the flesh. It's definitely not pre-recorded. All the live streams are me, myself, and I speaking to you guys live. I'm wearing a jersey. Do you know what it is? Do you know? Do you know what it is? Because it's summer now, it's way too hot to wear that a cold wool piece. So now I'm stuck with wearing, t-shirts or football jerseys, anything breathable or like a vest. So you guys will be seeing all my basketball and football jerseys jumping out during the live stream. Or I might wear a shirt, who knows? But the cold wool stuff, that's for the winter. Now in the summer, I can't really do that. Oh, come on, it's not hot. It's the fucking UK. The thing is, your body acclimatizes, right? So my body is so used to just the cold of the UK that anything that isn't cold to me is just hot. And so therefore I have to wear breathable clothes, even if it's 20 degrees. That for my body, that's really hot right now. I know it's a shame, but just it is what it is. Someone's asking me when does the show start? The Prada show has already happened in the past. So I'm just reacting to it and giving my thoughts on the collection, to be honest. Pilar says Prada. Pilar definitely definitely wants to talk about Prada because Pilar was the person that was asking me to review the Prada show. Um, so yeah, but kind of like a summary on this Prada show. Of course, we know that Miuccia Prada and Raf Simons are at the helm of Prada right now. Um, this collection, they say they wanted to imbue this sort of optimistic youthfulness through the collection, and it was done in many different ways. It was sort of like a discussion around how we react and interact with our clothes on a day-to-day basis. Different styling things that we do, wearing shirts under a polo, the fact that our clothes get creased with time, the fact that your collar might get messed up and then someone is like, oh, there's an issue with your collar, and they try to adjust it. All those kind of fun things that happen to our clothes day to day that sometimes we overlook or we take for granted, this constant relationship between us and our clothes. So that was kind of like the summary of this collection. Is kind of like this ritual of our day-to-day ways of dressing, which I thought was very, very interesting. And I think it's definitely interesting in, definitely more interesting than a lot of the ideas in their past collection. I remember there was a collection, a menswear collection that they did that was, talking about the ritual of going to school and the ritual of youthfulness, and how they kind of represented that was just by people wearing really short shorts that no one would ever wear to school, and like these super short shorts and blazers. And I was just thinking, that's not really the strongest or most interesting depiction of the ritual of going to school. But I think in this collection, this idea of like us interacting with our clothes, the tiny details that we take for granted and almost blowing those things up. Like in this collection, for example, you'll see different styling cues, like a polo shirt, but it's actually just one knitted piece. So it looks like a polo shirt being worn under a cardigan, but it's actually just one knitted piece. And there are many different things like that. You see garments that are intentionally creased. That was another idea in this collection. So very, very fun. I think that this, in terms of Raf Simons and Miuccia Prada being together, is definitely one of my favorite collections, especially when it came to menswear. I remember before Raf Simons was appointed as co-creative director at Prada, I was kind of hoping that they would hire someone, because the menswear always felt like an afterthought. The menswear was just a bit of cool tailoring, and sometimes you might get like, you know, a nice print, right? And it just used to annoy me because Prada women's wear was fantastic. What Miuccia Prada was making, always fantastic, always strong. And it almost felt like the menswear was just like, let's just water down some of the ideas from the women's wear and kind of just chuck that on the runway. And I've told you guys about that story when the last time I went to Bicester Village, I went to the Prada store, and you see all this crazy runway stuff, you know, for the Prada women's wear line, and then the menswear was just some boring ass blazers that didn't even fit nicely. So I think when Raf Simons came in, my biggest hope was that they would make the menswear interesting, and they've definitely done that. They've definitely done that, and this show is kind of like another idea that they're bringing the narrative and more interest to the menswear shows versus before. So that's something that I definitely love. Al says the collection was memorable. I mean, yeah, those product collections, like I said, that they said was a ritual of, you know, going to school and all that stuff. They're not the most memorable because they are just super short shorts and, you know, all those kind of things. So yeah. Mika says you liked it. I actually thought this was one of the most boring of all Raf Prada shows. I think I like it in terms of like the narrative matching the clothes. If we're talking about visually what looks the most interesting, I don't think that this collection, you know, looked the most interesting visually. I just like how because when I look at these clothes, I always think of like, does the narrative make sense? Do the clothes represent the narrative? And I think sometimes in a lot of the past shows, I felt kind of like what they're saying in the show notes and kind of what they're trying to imbue through this collection, it doesn't translate. And so I really like that in this collection, it seems like it translates. This felt very academic, like a review of his old work, some of Miuccia, and then recontextualizing it. Totally agree with that. And at the start, it's very interesting. It looks like this kind of rave happening. It's kind of like a Prada rave that you want to be a part of, and then the models emerge from this rave. Another idea that they talked about in the show notes that was in this collection is this idea of the garment being worn at the hem. And obviously, why that's an interesting idea, once again, it's talking about the day-to-day ritual of wearing our clothes. You know, when your trousers drag on the floor, at the bottom hem, it wears away with time, right? They also have, I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but how the collars are really like messed up, and even at the sleeves, they're kind of messed up and they have these interesting shapes, is they used wires in each piece. And something that could be really fun actually is the fact that as a wearer, you could transform the collar or the sleeves any way you want because it's just wiring. So you can bend the wiring any different way. What I will say from a quality standpoint and a construction standpoint, I don't know how that will hold up because normally the wiring that they use in clothes to kind of put things in certain positions are really flimsy and they break really easily. So I wonder how that would hold up long term, especially going in and out of the washing machine constantly, or you know, going to the dry cleaner and back. I'd be interested to know how that holds up. This is my 90s influencers, but love worn hems. Yeah. It felt like an outside rave at the morning. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what they're going for. Because when you listen to the music, you know, like playing songs like Insomnia, all this like, I don't know when I'm going to sleep sort of idea. So I think the music was even alluding to the fact that these are supposed to be models that have been passing through the night, and them leaving that sort of like shed, we can call it, or that white house, is supposed to be this idea of, you know, leaving the rave in the morning kind of tired. And it adds into this idea of the clothing being kind of messed up deliberately and transformed deliberately, because when you've been raving in a club, yes, your clothes will be messed up. They won't be perfectly pristine. They will be creased from people grabbing you when you're jumping in the mosh pit. They will be, you know, the collars will be all over the place. So that kind of in the idea also made a lot of sense with the music and the rave. That was really cool. I have a jacket with wired hood and glad they're removable. Hopefully this one would be removable. Yeah, I hope so too. Because like I said, a lot of wires in garments, they're just not the most long-lasting things. I also like those prints, by the way. The Bernard Buffet prints that they printed on the tops. I remember reading the show notes when the show came out, and they said in the show notes that they kind of wanted this idea of some of the paintings of Bernard Buffet to kind of look like a printed concert t-shirt, which is very interesting because I think that's kind of like a reach in the sense that if you print anything on a t-shirt, it's going to look like a printed concert t-shirt. There's nothing deliberately different about the way that they printed Bernard Buffet's paintings on a t-shirt that makes it distinctively different to, any other concert t-shirt because they just print in a square or a rectangle on a t-shirt. But that was interesting, kind of, bringing Bernard Buffet paintings to the forefront again because he's definitely a very famous and iconic French painter. At one point, they were comparing him to the likes of Picasso and all those things. So yeah, really, really cool. Hair should have been shaved or in spiky chunks going this way and that. Yeah, that would kind of be fun because obviously with this idea of chaos and just your day-to-day living kind of transforming your clothes, it'll be cool to see more messed up hair. In the context of the show, I think the hair is actually too perfect on most of these models. Something I did actually notice in this collection that I liked was the footwear because there were kind of like these interesting plays on very, very normal or very, very day-to-day, clothing that people would use. So things like monk straps, they made like slipper versions of the monk straps, or they made like these monk straps with a really tiny thin sole. And of course, I'm always talking about footwear because I think it's just really interesting. And I think a lot of people overlook footwear when they think of accessories or just everything in a show. But I did like those pieces. Like here you can see sort of the slipper versions that I was talking about. Yeah, if it's at the end of the rave, your hair is all sweated out. Exactly. So I would expect the hair to be a bit more messed up. Yeah, when it comes to Prada, Christian, color theory is always really, really nailed on when it comes to Prada. So yeah, I totally agree. Definitely the colors were well thought out. Here we can see this two-piece, the blazer, deliberately creased, as we said earlier. I also like that footwear with the steel toes. That's really cool. Yeah, this is why we're going to look at Vogue Runway after to see the looks. Because it is kind of hard to see anything in a runway show. Even I wanted to point out, some of the optical illusions, like there are belts that are kind of part of the trousers. Something that I was trying to figure out is if you can adjust the waist, even though that the belts are kind of a part. So in this look, for example, you can see the belts are part of the trousers, but I don't think the waist is adjustable with those belts. So I think that's definitely a missed opportunity there, or like a slight lack of attention to detail. Because if it still functioned as a belt, even though it's kind of part of the trousers, that would be even like more interesting. Also, these boiler suits, they remind me of Raf Simons at Calvin Klein. If you guys aren't too familiar with Raf Simons' work at Calvin Klein, I have a whole video, talking about the whole era of what Raf Simons did at CK. So definitely check that out. But these boiler suits are definitely like a reference to some of the stuff I saw from him at Calvin Klein. Is there a reason behind the models quick stepping so fast past the audience? I guess part of it is that they're supposed to be leaving a rave, so they're supposed to be like full of energy and full of alcohol in their system. And there's two ways you can see it. It's either like they're still energetic and they want to go to another rave, or they're actually just like fucked up because they've been to a rave and they've had too much alcohol, and instead they should be, falling all over the place. So I guess there are different perspectives that you can see it with. They are on E. Those belts are interesting. It's like you put the trousers in the wash and dry it and they got stuck there. This is another thing, but I guess this is why with, clothes like Prada and all that stuff, you don't put it in the wash. You take it to the dry cleaners, because how would you put a trouser with like this sort of belt? And I don't necessarily know what material they're using. I guess we can see that close up with the Vogue runway images. But can you imagine putting that in the wash and then the leather belt starts peeling? That would be actually insane. Like the leather just starts peeling out of nowhere. No, that's not an alcoholic walk. That's a snow mountain walk. Retro Snow White says, did you see the TikTok of the model who was featured on Vogue and was working at Taco Bell? Oh, fashion. No, I didn't see that. But if we're going to be honest, I don't know how many people know this, but models don't actually get paid that much unless you're a known name. So every model has like a fee. But the lowest you get paid as a model is actually walking runway shows. As a model, the reason why you walk on a runway show is so that you get kind of your name associated with luxury brands, and that kind of brings up your price when you do campaigns. So most models make all their money in campaigns, and kind of like the runway stuff is just an advert. So I've seen models work for like major luxury brands and get paid as low as $250. And if you're not a big model that's walking all the shows, it can add up quickly. Let's say you walk 20 shows for $250, you can make like a good living. But if you're only doing one show, $250, yeah, I mean, I can understand why a model would be on the runway of, like big shows and still be working at Taco Bell or stuff. It's rough. The fashion industry is very, things aren't as they seem, is the best way to put it. Someone says, do I need to start working at Taco Bell? Nowadays, in terms of runway shows, the models not used to walk slowly and stop and pose for the ladies to really see the clothing in the 30s. Oh, you mean in general? Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, when you look at old videos, I can even put one on the screen of just old runway shows, or even the shows that we can't find on YouTube. Yes, models would walk really slowly. They would twirl, because the whole point, and I actually have an answer for this, but I'll continue saying what I'm saying and I'll tell you what I mean. The reason why they used to walk so slowly is because they wanted the editors to be able to see the clothes, right? And that was of great importance. But I think now it's almost weird in the sense that because we have social media and because Vogue Runaway is there and because all these other things are there, I guess the way people see it is that you're going to see the clothes at some point anyway. And there's a re-see that editors can go to see the clothing after, if you want to see the clothing, up close. There are other videos, detailed videos that go on their Instagram and social media. So I think right now they think about the show not for us actually seeing the clothes and the details, because when you look at the runway videos, it's actually almost impossible to see the clothes. Now I think it's more about just creating a show rather than the actual practicality of models being slow and walking around. I also think it's to do with like we're in a TikTok generation or in a social media generation when people have really bad attention spans. So if models are doing what they're doing in this video that I'm showing you, which is a old Balenciaga video, I think people lose interest and people won't watch the runway shows, and they won't be able to garner the same interest. There won't be, those viral moments. So I think they just have to speed everything up. So yeah, that would be my biggest guess as to why it's like that. And this is true too. I guess fashion illustration was more of a thing too. Now we have photographers. That's very true too, because you would have like a fashion illustrator for Harper's Bazaar, for example, who would just illustrate every single look, right? Abidemi, that's a really, really strong point. Retro, okay, this is going back to the models. Yeah, I've heard sometimes there's zero pay for models, even for major magazine covers. Yeah, exactly. Like anything to do with magazine covers or, runway shows, all that stuff, there's not that much money in it for models. Where the money is for models is the campaigns, e-commerce shoots. You'll be surprised how much money people get paid for e-commerce shoots. I remember working for brands and seeing the fees that models got paid for e-commerce. But the campaigns, the reason why they make the most on campaigns is also depending on the contract you sign. So you might sign, like, your usage might be 4 months for one campaign, but then the campaign does so well. So then the company has to come back to you to renew that usage, maybe for a year, and they have to keep paying you. So I know a model, I have a friend that's a model who I think initially they got paid 20K to do a campaign, and the usage rate was 4 months long. And then the company was like, oh, this campaign is doing so well, can we renew the contract for a year? And then they had to pay, I think, 40K to renew it for a year. And then they renewed it again, and then they paid another 40K. And by the end of it, my friend had made like 150K off just one campaign that they didn't have to do more work for. It was just so that they could renew the usage or change the usage, like in the contract, like how they would do it and how they can distribute it and stuff. So yeah, there's loads of money in that side of things as a model, but everything else is kind of like an advert for that. But that's, as a model, that's where you make the most money, and that's where you kind of want to be, in a sense. Pilar says, in the 90s, it was the same. Cool magazines didn't pay models because they were cool. Thalia, this is true in terms of like the models, you know, walking really fast. Life moves at a different pace these days. I totally agree. The advancement of technology is mostly to blame. It has affected the way society takes in fashion in general. Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think it's kind of a difficult conversation, right? Because I think fashion back then was a bit niche compared to now. I think now fashion in general is mainstream. I think fashion back then was really, really niche. Like, if you were at a Balenciaga show, it's because you only cared about the clothes and nothing else. Whereas I think now there are many reasons why people look at runway shows online. And it's not just about people caring about clothes. Sometimes people want to see a nice show, or people go there because their favorite K-pop star is, you know, walking on the runway. So yeah, it just depends. So models are basically influencers and need brand deals. I guess if that's how you want to see it. I get models do different brand deals, right? Because it's like, I can't be the face of L'Oreal. My skin is not smooth enough. I'm not conventionally attractive enough to be in a L'Oreal campaign. So you still need models for certain things, right? And I guess brand deals are not about, well, some brand deals are, but most brand deals are not really about looking a certain way. It's about, they're trying to tap into your audience. So it's kind of like a different thing. But sometimes it overlaps. So there are models who are, you know, they're doing a brand deal, they're doing a campaign because they're a model, but also because people want to tap into their audience. You know, the Kendall Jenners and the Kylie Jenners and the Bella Hadids and all those people. I think lockdown also made people get used to fashion streaming. This is another good point. This is another good point. I was shooting outside for Fashion Week this season. There was a sea of K-pop fans outside of Prada and Fendi. Yeah, I mean, that happens every season. At Celine too. When I was in Paris to go to the McQueen debut of Sean McGear. And when I was there, it was absolutely packed for the exact same reason. I think, yeah, K-pop stans and fans, they're really, really intense, is the best way for me to put it. Extremely, extremely intense. Anyway, what I want to do now is go on Vogue Runway, have a look at some of these looks up close, because as we've just been discussing, it's very hard to keep up with a lot of these looks when, you know, everything is just shot very strangely. And so at least this show, you could see the clothes. Some runway shows, you're seeing an angle from up top and then from the right corner and the left corner. It's like, I can't even focus. I can't even see the clothes for more than 2 seconds before they show us the wide angle view of the set, right? So yeah. And someone says K-pop is a good example of how they tap into the fandoms. Exactly that. So these are what I was talking about in terms of footwear, with these, like, you know, the work shoes that we're used to seeing people wear, but then with an extremely thin sole, which completely transforms the shape of the shoe. I find those extremely interesting. I think those are really cool. Here we can see the deliberately creased sweaters. That, of course, is a reference to our everyday interactions with the clothing that we wear. It's kind of like a play on what's real and what's not. Because of course, it looks like a real crease, but it's actually done deliberately. It's kind of like that play. And of course, here we can see on the collar the wiring that has been used to sort of transform the collar. And in the context of, having this Prada rave by Raf Simons, that's definitely Raf Simons' influence more so than Miuccia. Kind of like this idea that you've been at a rave and kind of your clothes are in a state of chaos by the end of the rave. Here we can see, of course, some of the wiring detailing on the sleeves too. You can see some extra creases on the trousers. So that's really interesting. Also, my favorite pieces of footwear, again, we see these ultra thin sole shoes. Rachel says that editing for runway shows lately has been a headache. I totally agree with that. And yeah, Raf is definitely a raver. I mean, a lot of Raf's references from the past have been about raving and rave culture, especially in the UK, actually. If you look at some of Raf's references historically for his namesake label, they're referencing raves and bands in the UK, like places like Manchester and stuff. So that's his lane, that's his vibe. Something I found really interesting too, kind of like a play with what's real and what isn't, is the sunglasses kind of have these printed scenes. So of course this is like a reflection, but part of it is a printed scene where they kind of have these like permanent scenes that you can see on the sunglasses, which I thought was an interesting touch. That was really cool. Rich says, I love the look of those shoes, but the toe box might be annoying to wear. Yeah, I'm also hoping when I see ultra thin soles, because I have had issues with, Prada footwear having bad quality, I hope that it's constructed well, because a sole that is that thin is a recipe for disaster if it's not made out of something that is really, really strong, right? Feel like Io is going to steam on his sports channel right after this. Raf will always be a poser in my eyes because he used to criticize Virgil. Did he criticize Virgil? I don't know about that. What did he say? That being said, I definitely know that Raf has taken some ideas of what Virgil has done. So it would be kind of disingenuous for him to critique Virgil, depending on what he said. But anyway, continuing, here we have, once again, this was the belt that I'm talking about, this optical illusion where the belt is actually part of the trouser. Once again, I wonder if you can actually put those in the wash. I'm guessing not, straight to the dry cleaners. It's kind of annoying that this isn't straight. It almost seems like it's not constructed properly. The way it's kind of just like bendy all over the place. But then, to give them credit, maybe that's part of the idea, because obviously sometimes the way people attach their belts to their trousers is not all the way perfect. I also think that because obviously this belt is like that, it's not actually adjustable. So you can't cinch this belt that's part of the trousers, which I think is kind of like a missed opportunity there. I think another designer that had slightly more attention to detail might make that adjustable. So I think that would be really, really interesting. Wait, Raf said Off-White didn't inspire him. Very interesting. That's extremely interesting. Yeah, Corrade says it wasn't supposed to fit. Yeah, which is why I said to give them credit. Maybe that's the case where it's not actually supposed to fit. Of course, they've also used the wiring to kind of like transform the collar and all the different pieces on this. And also, what I love about this collection, actually, before I continue talking about it, is, do you notice we're talking a lot about the clothes? This isn't the case with a lot of brands, right? We end up talking about the narrative a lot, maybe because there isn't so much to talk about clothing wise. So this is actually a good thing that we're actually here analyzing the clothes look by look, whereas for some other brands and some other collections, we're not actually even talking about the clothes. We're talking about the narrative and kind of like the story around the clothes rather than the actual garments themselves, which is the bread and butter of what a designer should be doing anyway. So this look was actually a reference to, I think in the show notes, they said something about this idea of you wearing or stealing pieces from your mother or your father. and how differently it fits when you do that. So they played with everything from clothing that's super oversized. So that's why a lot of the trousers in this collection are super oversized. Like even in this look, for example, you can see the trousers are too long. And then another idea was also, you can see the sleeves are like super short. That's also a play on the different ways that things can fit when you wear your parents' clothes, depending on if you're much bigger than your parents now at an older age, or if your parents are like a lot bigger than you from when you're a kid and you try to wear their clothes. So that's very interesting. Me as a tall person, I don't like the idea of short sleeve coats, especially obviously here it's obviously been done deliberately, but that is how most jackets fit on me anyway. So I don't need for it to be done deliberately. Because I could just buy most jackets and they'll fit that way on my sleeves. So I'm more of a fan of actually jackets that have elongated sleeves and stuff like that. But obviously, this collection is not about me. It's in the context of the idea of the collection, which I thought was really cool. I also like the color of this coat. I really, really like the color. Here, kind of similar to looks we've seen before. We've got the belt as part of the look. We've got the play on the wiring. We've seen the play in the sleeves. You know, the collar. We see the thin sole footwear. We haven't actually seen any of the other iterations where, you know, I was talking about, yeah, these thin sole shoes. So here they're not as thin. They're a bit thicker, but they're kind of still a bit thin compared to how you would normally have these sort of, these look like monk straps. Also, in this look, you can see a lot better when I was saying that some of the sunglasses have these printed scenes. So it's kind of like a play of what's real and what isn't, which is kind of one of the big themes of the collection. Because when you think of sunglasses, normally when you look at someone's sunglasses, you can see the reflection coming from the sunglasses, right? But in this case, there's just like an image of people raving, and it's kind of like a play because you might look at the sunglasses and then look behind you to see if there's like that image there, and then you actually realize no, it's actually just printed on the sunglasses. So that is actually an interesting touch, especially in something as minute as sunglasses, kind of playing with that and seeing what they can do to make it more interesting. These kids are stealing 90s and 80s clothes. That's funny. Ronnie says that's kind of trippy. Yeah, you got to go through the detail shots, but a lot of the pants are adjustable. But would have been more fun if the belt part was. Yeah, I totally agree. Balenciaga is mad that they didn't do these sunglasses first. I know it seems like something that Demna would do, right? It's very, very interesting. But I like that Ronnie said it's kind of trippy. I totally agree with you. It is kind of trippy. And like I said, different sunglasses have different images. So over time, I'll be able to show you like the different images on some of these sunglasses. Like here, you can see like a different scene. And some of them just didn't have a print. So actually the reflection is actually the runway show, which is actually more interesting because now you don't know if you're looking at the reflection of the runway show itself or if you're looking at a printed image, which is actually really cool, right? These are some shoes that I also really liked with these sort of like steel toe. Ras Simmons loves the steel toe on footwear, doesn't he? Whether we're talking the steel toe Calvin Klein cowboy boots, or now we're looking at Prada steel toes, sort of like sneakers. He loves that sort of detail. Also, something I thought was really strong in this collection, of course, I've talked about this in past live streams, but is this idea of accessories for men. I think a lot of brands still haven't sort of figured out their accessories for men. And I've read a lot of financial reports where they say that one of the categories that has a lot of potential is the category of menswear, because they don't really have like an it bag for men in menswear, and every single brand is kind of like vying for a way that they can find this it bag for men. And I think this collection really presented a lot of strong ideas, a lot of different briefcases, a lot of interesting, you know, fabrics with a lot of these duffel bags. I think some of them were really, really cool. So that was something that stood out to me in this collection. This also, for people that don't know, this was kind of another play on between what's real and what isn't. So they've put these buttons here to kind of trick you into thinking, especially because the buttons are a different color, to kind of trick you into thinking this is a polo shirt styled under a cardigan, but it's actually just all one knitted piece together. So that's really cool. I really like that. And with the contrast buttons to kind of play with your head a bit. And then I also like the contrast color of the belts, because a lot of the other belts were either like gray or navy or black. So I kind of like that. And once again, we've got this bag with the belt. I have got his go, 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 go jersey on. That's funny. Yeah, the steel toe shoes are fun. I totally agree with you there. I totally agree with you. Jack says, I like the reflection of the show audience and the printed audience on the sunglasses, almost looking like they're facing each other. Okay, let's speed through these. Okay, we've got some more of these shoes without the steel toe. Really cool. What do you guys think about these sneakers, by the way? These sort of Prada sneakers that they look like sort of suede, velvety material. What do you guys think about that? Also, this is another play once again on kind of like creating a collar out of stitches. But it's actually just one knitted piece, and it doesn't have an external collar that flaps outwards. It's just flat. That's really cool. And then of course the super oversized trousers, which is a reference to, you know, wearing your dad's trousers when you're younger. And then I think a lot of course, a lot of the pieces are different, but a lot of the looks in the collection kind of follow the same themes. Of course, again, we've got a different print on the sunglasses. These are people look like they're at a concert and they're sort of filming on their iPhones. Something that I have an issue with. The fact that a lot of people in our generation, they aren't, you know, in the moment. They don't enjoy the moment. They kind of film everything and then enjoy the moment after when they're no longer in the moment. I find that strange. Or they go to places just so that they can film it for other people to enjoy rather than, you know, experiencing it themselves. I find that really strange. And I wonder if like that's kind of a commentary on what they wanted to bring through in this collection, or if they just kind of picked sort of cute ravey photos because it kind of works with the vibe of the collection. A bit Samba-esque. The street cap ones are cold. Oh, you mean the steel cap ones? Yeah. Sneakers with flat soles are my favorite. Someone says the shoes look like Margiela. Yeah, I can kind of, it's kind of because Sambas are so popular right now. I think every single shoe ends up looking like Margielas or Adidas. I was wearing my Margiela like Gats the other day, and someone asked me if they're like Sambas, and I get it. I wasn't like annoyed by that or anything. It's kind of like the silhouette is really similar, and now when people see that kind of sole and that kind of shape of shoe, they just think, you know, it's a Samba. What I appreciate about this RAF collection is that it has the potential to inspire other designers to create a new chic zeitgeist in menswear for the next 5 years. Yeah, and that's why I really liked the collection, because it's presenting really crazy ideas and very interesting ideas, but without the show or the clothing looking costumey, which I think a lot of designers, they kind of delve a bit too deep with that. Do they call them the FOMO inducing sunglasses? I love that. Prada need to pay you. Don't let Prada steal your ideas. If we see them calling those the FOMO inducing sunglasses, you know who to ask for your payment. Social media, that's their dopamine fix. Yeah, I guess you're talking about when I was saying, you know, how people just don't want to live in the moment. They're just filming everything. Because that's why even on my Instagram story, I don't really put a lot of things up there, because most things that I do, I just want to be in the moment and experience it there and then. And that's why it's really hard for me to vlog, because it's very hard for me to not just experience things as they happen, and for me to think more so about, okay, let me film it quickly. And that's why people want me to like vlog, and I think me vlogging would be fun, I guess, but it's really hard for me to do it because I don't think that way. I don't think I have a vlogging brain. Also, I agree with Duke, actually. They do look a bit more like Anitika Tigers than, you know, Margellas or Sambas, but the shape is like similar. I doesn't want to give us FOMO, a humble urban king. How do I get into fashion, like wearing and following designers? I really want to be like those girls who are scrutinized for liking fashion and trends. I would say that enjoy fashion at your own pace. There's no rush. Um, Even though you don't know what we're talking about, there's no, I don't know, like you don't feel like you have to fit into a certain understanding of what fashion is. Like focus on it at your own pace. Like find out what brands you like and then follow those brands and kind of learn about the designers and kind of what their design language is, what they're interested in. And I think that will lead you into good enough of a rabbit hole to kind of explore and expand from there. So yeah, that's what I would say on that matter. Don't kind of just work at your own pace. But I do try my best to kind of simplify what I say so it isn't very what's the word, like nichey. I'm trying to unniche my channel a bit because I know sometimes I might reference things and I'm like, oh, Raf Simons, Calvin Klein, and the people that watch my channel know what I'm talking about because they've watched my Raf Simons, Calvin Klein video. But obviously, if you're new coming to this and you're also learning about fashion, I can see how it might be a bit random for me to be referencing these things. But yeah, I'd say just follow it at your own pace. But I would say keep following the channel if you like it, because I think that, or people have told me at least that I have an interesting way of explaining things that makes it easier to understand. These are also slipper versions of these sneakers that I wanted to point out. We haven't seen the slipper versions of like the loafers or the monk straps yet. Can't even speak, geez. And here we have, of course, these ultra shortened sleeves once again that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I understand why it's like that, obviously in the theme of the collection. So it makes a lot of sense. These sneakers, Prada have been kind of doing this using this sole for loads of seasons at this point. So that's nothing new there, just with an interesting new upper. And then obviously kind of ideas that we've seen different parts. We were saying earlier, and I said earlier, that the hair of a lot of these models is a bit too perfect for the theme of the collection, considering they just emerged from a rave and a runway show, right? I think that their hair should have been fucked up deliberately. Like their hair should be all over the place. I think that would really, really make the collection more interesting. No more mules. It's a mule epidemic right now. A mule epidemic. Everyone is doing mules. They even now everyone's talking about like sneaker mules and all these things. It's insane. Human says you're not niche in a pretentious way though, and you are always willing to explain. Yeah, of course, because I don't want to be pretentious. Like obviously, we talk about this on this channel, right? Where it's really about breaking fashion down and really explaining it and not being jargony, because a lot of fashion is very jargony. So if you're just getting into it, it would be really difficult when people are saying it's about the going and coming and the left and right and the imbued inspiration of which the juxtaposition of left and right and going down when you twirl and spin and do a ballet twirl. It's just it's just so jargony. And I think people do that because they want to sound intelligent. But to someone like me, it's like my full-time job to just like analyze fashion and break these things down. It just comes across like you don't know what you're saying, so you have to kind of package it in a very complicated way, but not even complicated because it is jargon, like using words out of context and all that stuff, just to seem more intelligent or to seem like you know what you're talking about. But actually I think it has the opposite effect, which is quite comical actually. It is quite funny. If I didn't know it was rave aesthetics, I would have assumed indie sleaze. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I hate the jargon. It's so dumb. It makes me buy the brand less. Obviously, brands don't say the left and right. Actually, to be fair, there was a Gucci press release. I think it was Sabato's debut that kind of had they were literally saying the equivalent of like it's about the joy and the passion, but also the sadness and the feeling bad. And I was like, that doesn't mean anything. This was also cool, kind of like this play on, bandanas worn around the neck as a styling thing. That was a very interesting idea. See if there's anything else of note in the look. Also, yes. So this is also another cool idea in this collection. So this ink looks like it's been smudged on the piece. And this is actually part of the print, which, as you guys know at this point, is a reference to this idea of, using your clothes over and over again and kind of washing it over time, and the sunlight and how it gets damaged and how some of the ink might smudge on a piece when you've been wearing it for so long. That was really, really cool. What does Micah say? I've been doing slow fashion all week. Literally only watched 2 runaways. Ask Io if there's anyone super worth watching. I'll do it on stream. Yeah, I mean, we can look at some other shows. I haven't even seen a lot of the shows. I'm kind of keeping up right now because so many shows happen. So I don't even pretend to like keep up with the shows because it's physically impossible. But there are some shows that I'm like, oh, I might see the social media post and be like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to like do a live stream on that. But for the most part, I'm behind as well. It's really hard to keep up with these things. Anyway, moving on. Okay, we've got a similar idea. Obviously, they've done a different kind of type of belt that's part of the trousers in this way. Kind of like sewn into the trouser. And then a different color with the bandana styling. I also like kind of like what they've done here with as part of the print is they've creased it how a shirt would crease. You know, when you wear a shirt and it kind of bunches up or scrunches up in a certain area, they've kind of done a print which accentuates parts of the piece that would actually crease. So even here around this area, you can see that it's more smudged and it's darker because that's where your elbow would bend, right? That's around this area. That's where your elbow would bend. So that's really cool. I like the attention to detail with a lot of the pieces in this collection. Okay, here. Okay, we've got some just more normal shoes. It's really cool. What's going on with these trousers? These look really cool. These look like the boiler suits that they made later on in the collection. That's really interesting. Okay, yeah, it is a boiler suit, just worn under. And then a nice little coat. The printed sunglasses. What's that that's printed? It looks like LA. That looks like LA, but I could be wrong. Just in traffic somewhere. Okay, here, of course, we have a printing of Bernard Buffet's painting that they said in the show notes they wanted it to, look like a concert t-shirt, which once again, my thoughts on that was every concert t-shirt is just a print anyway, so there's nothing distinctive about this t-shirt and the way it's printed that makes it look particularly like a concert t-shirt other than it's just a printed t-shirt. I guess that was their way of just making it more interesting than what it is. And I don't think they need to do that in this collection because there's enough interesting stuff to kind of play with and work with. You can also see a play with this coat. You can see the wiring once again that's been used in the coat, so that's interesting in the context of this look. I will also say that the styling is really cute. Also, we can see the mules that I was talking about earlier. Someone said you guys are such nerds. Yeah, this is the nerdy fashion stream. It really is. It really, really is. This is definitely the nerdy fashion stream. We need your reaction to the IFM looks. Okay, that would be cool to look into that. That would be really cool. What other shows did you guys like from Fashion Week? Because like I said, I'm a bit behind. The only ones I kind of caught, I caught Rick Owens, the show with like all the white looks, and then Rick Owens comes out wearing black and all that stuff. I caught Loewe. Of course, I caught Dries Van Noten. It's his last show. I'm definitely going to talk about that. What other shows did I catch? I think that was it, to be fair. I haven't really been keeping up. I caught JW Anderson, of course. Oh yes, I did catch Lemaire. Lemaire was really good, actually. I did catch Lemaire. Lemaire was really good. I might actually have to talk about that. So yeah, Lemaire was really cool. Trying to think, what other shows did I catch? The Drees was the one that stood out to me the most, and I was looking forward to that. So I literally watched it live because, of course, such an iconic moment. Last show for Dries Van Noten. It feels like the end of an era. It almost feels like all my favorite designers are all just kind of going one by one. Designers that I was obsessed with when I was coming up in fashion. Like, what? I remember when I learned about the Antwerp Six, because at the time I learned about the Antwerp Six, it wasn't like a thing that people talked about a lot, right? So like even online, you couldn't find YouTube videos or like all these things on the Antwerp Six. And I was like so obsessed with them. Obviously, Anzuela Mista became my favorite designer, so obviously super obsessed. And she still is. But it's just insane that all of them are kind of just stopping design one by one, one by one. There's only how many left? Walter van Beirendonck, and that's it. And once Walter stops, that's the end of like the era of the Antwerp Six as a whole. Anyway, going through, okay, more of the print, which I didn't really find that interesting, other than it's just the print of the artwork of, you know, a famous painter. What I will say though, in terms of like printing the artwork of a famous painter, this is definitely a formula for Prada menswear that works. Do you guys remember what season was it? It was loads of seasons ago. There was a time in menswear, this was almost like maybe even 9 years ago, or like 8 years ago, where Prada had this artist print on like these collared shirts that went absolutely crazy. They looked like sort of these like space age artwork, and it was a reference to a really famous painter that I can't remember right now. But those shirts were like all the rage in menswear, right? Yeah, spring summer 15. There we go. So I think this is kind of a formula that Prada uses, is kind of like just printing artwork of famous painters on pieces. But I think that it's not as interesting when you just do it on a t-shirt. So I think if they wanted to kind of continue that formula, they should have done that on like silk shirts, or, you know, just something more interesting than a t-shirt. So yeah. Okay, now we can see more of the details. I'm trying to see if there's anything like different that I've missed out. Of course, I've talked about the bags that have this sort of this leather patina. They kind of look worn, which of course is also a reference to this idea of wearing your clothes and how your clothes interact with you as you wear them, and how your garments change with time as you continue to use it. So having a pre-patinaed bag is actually amazing because I like that patina. That's cool. Pre-worn leather bag. Yeah, Rachel says I love those worn leather bags. Rachel says I would buy one of those. I would buy one of those too if I could afford it, but I probably won't be able to afford it. But yeah, definitely cool though. Okay, we still got the play with the wiring, the chunky sneakers that Prada does every damn near every season these days. The trousers. So yeah, I think those were the main ideas in the collection. I think I'm just gonna go through and see if there's anything that I'm missing or I've missed out. Because I think everything I've mentioned, it's just the same, but in different colorways and styled maybe slightly different. And of course, you have the boiler suits at the end. We also have, once again, these kind of like pre-patinaed sort of worn leather pieces. Here we've got a leather hoodie, you've got a leather coat. But yeah, same ideas, same ideas. But yeah, it's interesting because obviously some people were saying, and once again, there's no right or wrong answer. Some people were saying that they found this the most boring show for menswear by Miuccia Prada and Raf Simons, whereas this actually is one of my favorite that they've done because of all the details and kind of how well the ideas mesh with the clothes you actually see on the runway. I think For a lot of, and I've said this in past reviews I've done of Miuccia Prada and Rassiman's work, I think since they've come together at Prada, there are many collections and many shows where I think there's a huge disconnect between what they say they're inspired by and what they say the inspiration of the show is and how the clothing looks. It almost looked like they kind of made a clothing collection that's full of desirable clothes. And this is something that they talk about all the time. You want clothes that everyone's going to wear, that you can wear over and over again, that you can fit into a wardrobe, which is kind of Miuccia Prada's vibe anyway. But then it seems like they've designed that collection and added the narrative after. Whereas this collection, you get the sense that obviously the idea is baked into the fabric and every facet of the collection to every look. So that's why I really like this. It seems more cohesive in that sense. Is the idea of the shoes that they should be replicated shoes with worn down soles from your parents? Obviously, they use a trend as well. I don't actually know, but that would be very interesting. If the reason why the soles are really thin is because they're supposed to represent worn down soles from your parents. Actually, I think you're onto something, because if you think about it, they are the style of the kind of shoes that we associate, let's say, with, your dad wearing a suit to go to work and he's wearing monk straps. But because he's been wearing those monk straps for years and years, now the sole is actually worn down to the point where it's actually that thin. And he's refused to, change the sole. So actually, I definitely think you're onto something with that one. You're definitely onto something. That's a great observation. That's a really strong observation, actually. I think you're onto something there. I'm just looking at the bags because they have so many different interesting bags in this collection for men. Of course, here's another play. This is just one knitted piece with the V. And of course, they have to find a way to get that Prada triangle some way, somehow into one of the pieces, one way or another. Even if it's barely a triangular hole in the knitwear, they're like, we just have to, where are we going to put and place the Prada triangle? So the shoe with the big outsole is the one from previous seasons. They reused like 3 to 4. Yeah, we're talking about the thin soled like leather shoes, not necessarily like the outsole, especially like the chunky outsole. You've been using that for many seasons at this point. So yeah, you says unlike the thin ass Valentino sneaker. I just didn't like the look and the shape of those Valentino sneakers, and they had that massive V that was just a no-no. These are way more interesting, ways to use a thin sole. And obviously, if we're talking about like the theme, kind of like what Onno said, where it could be this idea of your dad's soles being worn down or your mum's soles on her shoes being worn down. That's so conceptual and so much more interesting than just having the Valentino sneakers that were kind of just, I didn't really like them. I always feel jealous when I see the models wear the outfits. I feel resentment. You shouldn't feel resentment because most times they don't get to keep the clothes anyway. They're just gonna wear it and then give it back. So that's another thing too. Ronnie said they look like shitty Veyers. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the infamous glued on Prada monolith sole. Exactly. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure if you saw my video. I had a video that went viral on TikTok where I was talking about one of my friends who had the Prada monoliths, and they literally separated from the sole while she was walking, and you could see like the remnants of glue on the sole. And I was like, for $800, the sole is detaching from the upper that easily. Like, she's barely worn them and she barely walks everywhere because she's a rich kid. So she takes Ubers everywhere. She doesn't walk. There's no reason why those like the sole should have detached. And people were really butthurt because it went like viral on TikTok when I made the video. And people on TikTok were butthurt. They were so butthurt. Like, Prada makes good quality stuff. I have a Prada piece from years ago. And I'm like, When I say a brand makes bad quality things, it doesn't mean every single thing they make is bad quality. It just means that their attention to detail or their quality is so bad that everything isn't good quality. At the price point they're charging, everything should be impeccably made. And so if there's something that isn't, that's a big problem at that price point. But people just see it as like a personal attack because they bought the same thing and they don't want to feel like, they've been scammed by a brand. So they just take it out on the person that is pointing these things out, which I find kind of funny because people are really spazzing in the comments. It was really funny. My mother would never. The cobblers love her. Yeah. She would get the soles changed. I know the hood is making them keep those chunky sneakers in rotation because that's the only place I see them. Oh my god. That's funny. I think it tends to be the case that like Prada clothing, a lot of it is definitely well made, but the footwear, not so much. So I think it also depends on the category of clothing, right? Don't shoot the messenger. That's funny. Um, okay, Rachel's asking for any advice on Prada lovers because you're saying you've literally never walked into a Prada boutique and not seen terrible quality. Yeah, it just depends. So how I treat it is I don't think of any brand as having good or bad quality. That way, I don't go in just buying stuff because I just assume it has good quality. So everything I buy, I have to inspect it. I have to inspect the quality for myself. Look at the finishing. Oh my god, something that had sensational finishing recently. And for you guys watching, I'm going to release a vlog. Well, nah, not really a vlog, but like just me talking about Celine's latest pop-up in London. And Celine, their latest collection, I was like looking at the finishing of the clothing really up close. And like one of my friends who's a designer has like a brand shows at Milan Fashion Week was with me at the time. And we were both looking at how well these clothes are finished. Like they were finished so well. And I was so happy because once again, I talk about all these brands with terrible finishing and terrible quality. And it was sensational to see a brand that has just impeccable finishing. I think even in when I was filming, I actually filmed us talking about the finishing for a bit. Um, but yeah, I judge it all on a case by case basis. Every garment I look at, I have to inspect. So I never really like when I'm buying things, think of this brand as good or bad quality. I just have to see it for myself. Ona says, rule number one, never buy outlet. Those are outlet productions, and Prada is one of the big ones capitalizing on it. That's a good point. Because, yeah, I don't think people know, but not everyone knows that, some of the stuff that goes to the outlet is specifically made for outlets and they're made with low quality fabrics because they're going to sell it at a cheaper price. People think that outlets are full of stuff that doesn't sell in like the main stores, but that's not actually how it works. I like these. These like worn kind of like faded patinaed leather bags are it with the belts. What? If I had money, straight pickup, straight purchase. Because once again, I've said this in streams before, but I like bags that can fit my laptop or my camera equipment because I take those everywhere. And most bags, especially for women, can't. Um, it's kind of weird. It's kind of almost sexist, right? This idea that women don't need to carry things or they don't care about, practicality in their bags. So we're going to sell women these tiny bags that are super impractical. But then when they make bags for men, they make them really big and practical. That low key is very sexist, extremely sexist now that I think about it. But yeah, I love that bag. I'd certainly buy it. I'd certainly buy it. Who knows? I might win the lottery within the next year. Not that I even play the lottery ever, but we can all dream. This is a good view on these kind of like thin sole shoes. Also, this bit here is very interesting. Why is it like it's almost like elasticated? That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, Pilar says it's sexist. Yeah, I mean, it is sexist because I think that comes from an understanding. I've read like old fashion books in the past where they kind of talk about why, and I think I've talked about this in the video, but anyway, to rehash this thing for people that are new or haven't watched some of my old videos, basically, the reason why men started wearing suits and started toning down the colors and toning down, they don't wear like really ostentatious things and all that, is because there got to a point in fashion where being frivolous with clothing was seen as being feminine. And so in a move for men not to feel like they're being feminine, or they don't want to be seen as feminine, they started wearing the most muted colors and the most, like, let me not say boring, because tailoring is not boring. There's so much nuance in tailoring, it's unreal. Like, there's so much to play with in tailoring, but less in your face, less um playful on like a surface level, right? They kind of had this understanding of, oh, that's something that only women do. That's something that only women do. And I feel like that understanding of fashion has kind of sifted and filtered into other parts of like our everyday life, which is why it influences like menswear collections and how they look, or womenswear collections and how they look, or bags made for men and how they look, or bags made for women. The next young man says it's not sexist. Any gender is free to wear / carry whatever bag they like. I mean, yes, of course. And the kind of audience I have, they'll just buy whatever bag they want. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying it's interesting that those bags are presented in a menswear show, not a women's wear show. And then in a women's wear show, they're like smaller. The bags are smaller. It's almost, why are the men's bags bigger? And it's not just in bags. It's kind of like this idea, kind of what Joanna is saying. Yeah, the fact that a lot of women's wear pieces don't have a lot of pockets compared to men. So yeah, that's facts. That's facts. That's facts. But anyway, continuing. Okay, we can see a heavily creased blazer. At least the sleeves aren't too short. They're kind of short, but not too short. This crease is so it's so aggressive. It just looks like a front pleat. I do like these shoes with the steel cap though. I do like that. Definitely more so than the plainer ones in the same collection. They're pretty cool. And also the sole is like damn near non-existent. They're like Nike Frees. Barely a sole. The only issue I have, I like the concept, especially if, kind of going back to what Omni said, if it's this idea of your shoes being worn out, being worn by your parents, and kind of how they wear over time. But if we're thinking of these shoes on a practical level, shoes with a sole that thin, they're going to just have a hole in them not too long after you start wearing them. Like with me, my soles wear off really quickly. Maybe it's because I weigh so much. So I wouldn't wear shoes like that. Definitely not. Definitely not. Those flat thin soled shoes are just not it. Ninja shoes. And yeah, of course, they had to give us another triangle. Here we see the triangle kind of forced at the back of the creased blazer. They just have to show us a triangle one way or another. We're gonna have to see it. You just have to add extra soles immediately. Also, it's also a design thing. Proportionately, a large bag looks more appropriate to a man, and a small bag, and vice versa. That's also a good point, by the way, because, like, for example, let's say a woman who is, what's the average height for a woman? Maybe like 5'5", with a bag the same size as the average man, that's like what, 5'9", 5'10". Yeah, it would look a lot more tiny on the man. It's the reason why, like, For people that don't know, I'm really into motorbikes, and because of my height, I can only really ride effectively like supermotos or like adventure motorbikes. I can't ride all these like super sport bikes because first of all they're too small, I'm too tall, and then also I would look stupid riding those bikes. It'll look like I'm riding a toy bike. So it's kind of like a similar concept. Interesting, interesting, interesting. He said, as a short, stalky guy, I respectfully disagree that anything in fashion is sexist towards a woman. I disagree. And why did you say as a short, stalky guy? Because if we're talking law of averages, the average man is 5'9", 5'10", which isn't short. Um, so everything is all about the averages, right? That's what everything in fashion tailors towards. Um, so yeah. I'm trying to pop wheelies in Brooklyn wearing Andy and a Prada clutch. That's hilarious. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of like the Prada collection in a nutshell. Um, but it's really, really fun. I really like the ideas. Definitely one of the Prada collections that I find more interesting. Here we can see again one knitted piece kind of made to look like a collar. Absolutely love the collection. I never thought I'd be saying that about our Miuccia and Rassiman's collection. Like I've seen collections that I'm like, oh, it's nice, but this one I actually really love. And there's a lot of stuff that if I was a rich person, I'd actually buy. Um, so yeah, really, really cool. What are you guys' closing thoughts on the Prada collection? Overall, what's your overall take? What's your verdict on the collection? Luke says Ras Simons needs to stop terrorizing fashion. Luke, as always, all guns blazing. That's funny. The hater I aspire to be is here. 1 million on the hill says a bit gimmicky for me. I love the color block combo color cardigans. The coats are so cool. I love the shape. Interesting, interesting. As a longtime Prada fan, it's too boring. As if you're a longtime Prada fan, I can see what you mean by it's too boring because Prada is normally like prints and patterns and like more interesting color usage, more interesting color blockage. So I get it. Um, I just think that this is their most successful way of imbuing the concept into the clothes that I've seen them actually do since they've been together at Prada. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, it's not fact or anything. It's just personal opinion. So everyone is valid to have a different opinion. Yeah, exactly what I was saying. Some of those plain colors, they can do better, maybe my personal thought. Exactly, which is what I was saying earlier. What I was alluding to in terms of like Prada normally has more interesting color usage across the board. Very fashion meta, I feel. I don't know how regular customers will react. Yeah, I guess that's left to be seen. But if we go back into, the financial reports, Prada and Miu Miu had the highest growth that we saw of all the brands. And they're on top of every list, the list index, they're on top of it. So whatever they're doing, is working clearly. So as much as we say, we'll see how this translates, it has been translating so far. So we'll see if it will continue to translate. Yeah, let me see if there's anything interesting on their Instagram page to kind of continue to talk about. Hopefully the volume isn't on because I don't want any volume. Just kind of, okay, cool. The volume is off. Their client services must be blowing up. Regular customers love these kind of collections. Yeah, I'm very sure. I mean, like I said, financially they've been doing amazing. So I can't see that, changing anytime soon. Here's money for your get out the hood fund. Thank you very much, Leah. That's so funny. HWW says, yeah, if they can do in jokes and be accessible, it's a win-win. I like the Sakai show more. I mean, Sakai is amazing though. Like I like Sakai damn near every season. So yeah. I see this collection like the row. You can't focus on how it is shown. You have to focus on how you will implement the pieces to your personal style. That's a cool take. Prada does well to maintain exclusivity because it takes a very rich customer who wants to buy into such minimal clothes for a high price point. And then the urban client loves their accessories. The urban client, guys. Then the urban client loves their accessories. The clients of niggers. So let's put it towards the perennial Andy trouser fund. Let's see some other looks that they've got some of the ambassadors wearing. They love those monoliths. They're really trying to push those. You live in the ghetto. I had no idea. Who knows? Al says they really be taxing for the accessories though. Half a rack for a hair stick. Oh my god, that's funny. If you see the stream, the red carpet is as important as the runway, all the K-pop and so on. Yeah, exactly. That's part of, the pandemonium with the collection. It's like having these VIPs that drags insane attention to the collection and the fanfare of just all the people outside the show just screaming and shouting, "Ah! Oh my god!" It is quite entertaining going to the shows and like seeing people head over heels over their favorite like artists. And in my head, I'm just thinking, they're a human being, right? Just like you. They're talented and they make amazing music if you love the music, but there's no need to treat them like a god. They're just another human like you and I. Are we the urban clients? I actually love that word so much, the urban client. I love the people that write, the copywriting, because I've done this job before in fashion where I've done the copywriting for descriptions and e-commerce. They're like, menswear collection, hems and collars are animated with unreal dynamism, bearing traces of life. That was 100% how I used to write when I used to write stuff for like e-commerce. So I get it. That's a funny printed picture, just someone lying down on a beach. You could literally see their bum. That's funny. I was on the Prada website for the first time the other day. I couldn't believe pricing, but all brands retail are kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean, retail prices now are insane. Like they're absolutely insane. But you shouldn't have any issues because your profile picture, those are the CCP drip sneakers. So if you're buying those, then you won't have too many issues. Let's go on the Prada website and see kind of what's in stock right now and what they're selling. Just as a good case study. Let's see. Prada, Prada, Prada. Okay, they've got the menswear show on their homepage. Men's summer collection. Let's have a look. Wow, silk jacket, woolen silk jacket, 2.1K. This literally looks like a pajamas. For 1.2K. Oof, that's a bit steep. And that's pounds. Because remember, all my stuff is tailored to pounds. So just, multiply it by, I don't know, 1.2 or 1.3 for dollars. Like, that's insane. Cotton blend jacket, 1.6K. What? No way. See why I said that the bag, if I can afford it, because look, the more plain one, this isn't even like a patinaed, worn in sort of runway piece. This is damn near 5K. My word. Just like a handbag, a leather handbag for men, 5K. I will be damned if I spend that kind of money on a bag like that. Someone says sort by price. Let me let me sort by price, highest to lowest. Okay, leather jacket. Okay, this might be like kind of like from the runway because this is like a patinaed, leather jacket. Um, so the patina leather jackets they go for 5K. Good lord. Good damn lord. And the funny thing is, it's sold out in every size apart from Italian 48. So people are loving this stuff, and clearly they have the customers that buy this stuff. This is why they're growing financially quarter to quarter. I'm on a respirator looking at these prices. I still can't wrap my head around how so many people have money to buy all this stuff without going broke. Rent is supposed to be mad. Who are you robbing / sleeping with? I just I think I'm just very disconnected from like really, really rich people because I obviously have rich people that I know um from like fashion and stuff. But I don't live with them. I don't live their life. So it's kind of crazy to think that some rich person goes into a store and just buys like 5 patinaed leather jackets from Prada and spends like 25K in one go. But genuinely that is probably how it happens. And I think obviously a lot of it too is like you see the debt figures, you see that the average person is like thousands of dollars in credit card debt. Some of it is out of necessity. Maybe bills have gotten so high and they have kids to fend for that literally they can't find any other way to pay for things other than to go into credit card debt. But then I do think some of it is just young people trying to buy things that they can't afford and going into debt because of it. And then never coming out of that debt because the interest rate eats them alive. So, yeah, I think it's a combination of many different things. It's rich people, it's, people that can't afford it. It's like everyone under the sun. Doesn't CCP seem cheap now? You know what? CCP does seem kind of cheap with the retail prices of some of these luxury brands. To be fair, it's a good point. Seems like the urban class has upward social mobility. Micah, exactly. Micah got money for the LV turtle. See, those are the people buying it. We're like, who would buy this LV turtle? And then Micah buys it. Although I do think that Micah copped that partially because it's like he wants to use it as a core accessory, and partially because it's kind of like cool stream lore. Kind of like the fact that we were like making fun of it in the stream, and then the next stream he's literally like, "Oh, look what I bought." I think he just did that as like a really sick joke, which I find really funny. These sneakers for 1.1k, brushed leather. 1,000 for Chelsea boots. It's stuff like this I don't understand, because unless they have a really interesting shape, which these kind of square toe boots, I know cheaper heritage British English brands that make high quality footwear, and it's not Prada, and it's like half the price. And it's like well made, and like when something goes wrong, you can take it back to the shop and they'll repair it free of charge once they verify if it's authentic or not. So there are some pieces where it makes me question, why do people buy these things specifically, other than the fact it just has the logo on it? Prada is like Uniqlo for rich people. It's where you get $1,200 white shirts that look like PJs, or basic cardigans for like 2K with no logo, no detail. It's so cynical. I totally agree though. No way. CCP, the new Tom Crom. I mean, in this luxury market, you are not wrong. You are actually not wrong, now that I think about it. When I was in uni, a lot of people were in serious credit card debt from only buying labels. I reckon not much has changed. I think it will be a lot worse now, because I think that in the UK, I remember them saying that they're trying to put it in law where you get a credit check before your Klarna is like authorized. Because I think now, I don't know, but I think now how Klarna works is you can kind of just you can put things on Klarna, and it's only until like a certain amount of money before they start like verifying stuff. So that's really bad. That's really bad. You have to kind of help people help themselves in a way. Micah's father is a Nigerian oil baron. My joke money is rubber chicken at Dollar Tree, not at Alvita at all. I have some workwear boots from Prada, and that's only because DSM was fire selling them. Well, let's see. I'm kind of behind on the comments. Let me try to keep up. Since you're already on the website, put a pair of monoliths in your basket. That's funny. You guys are actually hilarious. You guys kill me every stream. I'm just completely cracking up. If you look at LV, at least a shirt that's 12, I guess you mean like 1200 to 1500, has a cool print or some design details, but that's the power of minimalism. Product can make more money doing less. True. Somebody told me the UK had the biggest debt in credit cards in the world after Japan, but I don't know if that's true. Ooh, I mean, it could be true. Let me check what the average credit card debt is. Average credit card debt in the UK. I'm curious now. So the average credit card debt per household in the UK as of April 2023 is £2,363, which is quite a lot of money, because if you think of like the interest rate of really, well, most credit cards, it's going to be 30% or higher. So if you're paying an APR of 30% on £2,363, oof, I can see how very, very quickly you can go into like a kind of debt that you won't be able to pay back like extremely quickly. Like 2, 3, 4 years, that's the end of it. You'll never pay that shit back. Just be paying off that debt for the rest of your life. If you had millions, £850 is basically £8.50, which for a pair of shorts is a steal. Or maybe even like 85 pence. These streams always have me hanging on to being awake by a thread. Time zones will be my downfall, I fear. Mel, what time zone are you in? Because I obviously have stopped making them super late. So even now it's like 11:04 in the UK. And I've stopped streaming at like 3 a.m. and all that sort of stuff just to, cater to a wider demographic of people. So it'll be interesting to know what time zone you're in. The margins Prada is making on these pieces that are basically made straight from the pattern block with no changes just makes my stomach curl. I know it's insane, right? Because if you have to make a quality garment and then add like really high quality print, the process of doing that high quality print obviously costs loads of money. But Prada can obviously bypass that because, kind of similar to what someone said earlier, it's kind of this, minimalism. So they can kind of get away with just doing that and no one cares because, like, yeah, but that's Prada. That's what Prada does. So no, they get away with murder price wise because that should be a reason why it's priced less. But luxury pricing is less to do with, if the pricing makes sense. And it's more to do with brand positioning. Because I mean, I've worked at luxury brands where how they price things, it just seems like a joke. They're like, what should we price this season, guys? This jacket. Bottega is pricing theirs at 4,500. So let's price ours. Let's undercut them slightly. So let's price ours at 4,100. So it's a steal. Like, those are literally the conversations that happen when people are pricing pieces. And because I've been on that side of the table, I know they kind of just play games with a lot of these prices. I can't remember anyone around my age wearing luxury brands. I live in Milan. It's mostly middle-aged people or influencers. Right, and most of the influencers, they don't buy it, which is why I have a huge issue with most influencers because they're promoting overconsumption over clothes that they wouldn't buy. They're either sent stuff for free and then they act like they love it and that they bought it and that they cherish it and whatever, even though they don't, and they wear it once in an outfit photo and they might not even wear it in person outdoors. And then also they just order loads of stuff from Farfetch and then they wear it for content and then they return it. So yeah, a lot of influencers, yeah, you should take all that stuff with a grain of salt, to be fair. It's 1 here, East African time, but I'm an early riser and a student. Oh wow. Okay, hopefully we can do stream slightly earlier to cater for the people in the East African time zones. I mean, there's something to the perversion of paying that much for something adjacent to basic, like regular line 14 Margiela cardigans. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's 11 p.m. and the sky is only now getting darker. It's still blue. My cardigan rhythm appreciates the late. Oh, my circadian rhythm. Sorry, I was like cardigan rhythm. In my head, it was like that doesn't make sense. My circadian rhythm appreciates the late streams. They get away with the price because they're not mass producing. Not all stores get the full collection, and the ones that do get maybe one of each size and not every size. Yes, they're not mass producing per se. There will be pieces that they do mass produce. But not everything is mass produced. I would think that a lot of the ready to wear stuff, especially the runway stuff, definitely isn't mass produced. But they still don't get a pass because, you know, Prada is a big enough company to where they have the biggest. I don't want to get into this conversation again. I talk about this all the time, but as someone that has kind of worked in every facet of fashion, when we talk about factories, even if Prada don't own their own factory, the factories that they do use will have Prada as their number one priority because they probably produce in a bigger quantity than all the other people that produce there. So Prada have the lay of the land to do whatever they want. They can get a discount on all the fabrics. They can get a discount on all the processes. It's also economies of scale. They'll be like, well, because we're making 1,000 of this piece with you, we're going to have it at a discount per piece of this and that. So actually, funny enough, to produce a brand that is a small brand would cost way more money to produce the exact same things as Prada, because they just don't get as much leeway with the factories and stuff. And so therefore, if anything, if we're talking about pricing based on what it should cost, a lot of Prada's pieces should actually cost less than like a lot of, up and coming brands. But it's just pricing based on like the competition and the market. They're trying to market themselves as luxury brands, so they can't price. It can't be cheap. It can't be super affordable. It kind of fucks up the marketing and the dream of it. So that's why they like price it like crazy. Exactly. They get the best pricing because of the margin, so they can make a cashmere basic for way cheaper than a smaller brand. Same thing with the Ralph Lauren. Exactly. Um, exactly. So the pricing has nothing to do with them producing in small quantities, because you could literally go to a store in Paris and that I've seen stores like this in Paris where they're just focused on cashmere sweaters, and the cashmere sweaters are just as good a quality as, like, let's say a Prada cashmere sweater, and it's cheaper than a Prada cashmere sweater, and it probably costs them more money to make than the Prada sweater. So yeah, this is why my aunt-in-law asked her friends to make a Valentino dress that she loves for only 200 € something. Of course, the quality is different, but looks exactly the same. But also, if she gets the dress made custom, the fit would be way better than buying it off the rack anyway. So yeah, that's another thing. You are in character by calling circadian rhythm cardigan rhythm. That's funny. Exactly. They get the lowest cost and charge the highest price. This is why we should focus on value. But then, is luxury fashion about value though? That's not really what luxury fashion is about. So I think it just depends how you see it. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Selvage denim jeans for 1.3K. Like, I know brands that specialize in selvage denim. Like, that's their MO. They produce in the best factories in Japan, and they make wide selvage denim jeans for like £200 max. Max. So that's what I'm saying. It's not really, you don't buy luxury because of value for money, really. You buy luxury for, how it makes you feel and all that stuff. Also, part of it is, of course, it's unique. A lot of stuff that luxury brands do, you can't just find in like other stores. So that's where it does get interesting. And that's kind of, if when I will buy a luxury piece, it will be because it's something that I can't find anywhere else. But apart from that, yeah, it's not really about anything else. In real life, I only buy a few luxury items a year. Reasonable price, reasonable pace. It adds up over time. I would argue that's how it makes someone feel will add to its value to that person. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's kind of like cars, right? So cars, you can buy a Range Rover or you can buy a Rolls Royce if you're a rich person. Now, is a Rolls Royce twice as good as a Range Rover? Hell no. But you're buying the Rolls Royce because of how it makes you feel, and it makes you feel like a Rolls Royce driver and blah blah blah. It's kind of like, part of it is not just the quality, part of it is psychological. And it's also about how you present to other people. So it's like, if you're a rich person, you're going to wear Prada because everyone in your social circle wears Prada. So it's kind of like, even if you're just buying the most basic things, like, yeah, what are you wearing today? I'm wearing Chanel. What are you wearing today? I'm wearing Prada. Oh, those bags we saw today, I will look into buying. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, did someone say the did someone say the audio is not working? Okay, cool. It is, it is, it is. In Rolls Royce's defense, Range Rovers are the most high maintenance cars ever. Yeah, Rolls Royce, I'm sorry, Range Rovers, they do go bad all the time. They always have issues all the time. I just think, okay, let's talk about cars quickly, because we're just talking about luxury things in general, like just luxury industries. I think that for me, um, um, you're saying Rolls Royce Cardigans is worth more than its equivalent range. That's not the point I was making. Maybe you misheard me. I said Is a Rolls Royce 3 times as good as a Range Rover? Because Rolls Royces can cost 3 times as much as a Range Rover, sometimes even more, depending on what Range Rover you get. Because a Rolls Royce Cullinan in the UK, depending on how you spec it, can literally be like £450,000. And then if you don't, I think the highest, most expensive spec Range Rover money can buy is like 200K. So that would make the Rolls Royce Cullinan more than twice the price of the highest spec, like a Range Rover SV. Um, but is the Rolls Royce Cullinan more than twice as comfortable and as good as the Range Rover? And are the massage seats more than twice as good? So it gets to a point where it's like diminishing returns, and it's just like how you feel and all that sort of stuff. And for me, even when it comes to cars, I'm like really into cars, but I honestly feel like it's diminishing returns. Because it's like if I was rich and I wanted a fast car, I would buy like an Alfa Romeo or something. Um, because I like a Ferrari is just like it's diminishing returns. I can't drive 250 miles an hour on public roads. So I don't see the sense of it after a certain point. If you want something that's just fast and fun to drive on the road, um, I'd buy like an Alfa Romeo or a Porsche and stop there. The whole like people buy like Porsche 911s, GT3 RSs to drive on the road and they have back pain. It's like diminishing returns after a certain point. And why I'm saying the diminishing returns point is because I think that in luxury fashion and clothing, which is the reason why I don't buy into a lot of luxury brands, is for that same reason. It just gets to a point where it's like diminishing returns. Yeah, if I was rich, I would just rent supercars for a track day. Yeah, exactly. And then drive more comfortable cars day to day, not destroy your back trying to drive like an 812 super fast on public roads where you're going over speed bumps and almost breaking your knees. Um, Unless you live on the autobahn. Yeah, for the Germans, they can have at that one for the Germans that, are on the autobahn. But even if I lived in Germany, I wouldn't drive on an autobahn. I'm such a I'm such a what's the right word? Um I always play things safe. So even on the autobahn, I'll just be on the slow lane. I don't want to like be driving at 150 miles an hour and just, end up crashing because I lose control for a split second, or someone is drunk and they swerve onto the wrong lane and I'm already going at 150 miles an hour. And when I try to, stamp on my brakes, my car goes flying, like all that sort of stuff. I'd rather just avoid all of that and just stay on the slow lane. So even if I lived in Germany and I was close to the autobahn, I still wouldn't. Scarcity, limited edition, exclusivity, investment, all words used to trick people into paying over the odds. Yeah, I agree. I own a 12-year-old Range Rover and the build quality is crap compared to a Rolls Royce of the same age. I guess that's a good point in terms of like long term, the build quality, how does it hold up? Said, I'm gonna stop you right there. If I'm buying a Rolls Royce, I'm not driving that bitch. I'm getting road in that 304. That's funny. It's like if I'm in a Rolls Royce, I have a chauffeur. I'm not driving that. It depends what Rolls Royce you buy, by the way, because some Rolls Royces are catered to you actually driving the car. So I think it's a Ghost is actually engineered for the driver. So it's for driving experience and dynamics. Whereas I think another one like a Rolls-Royce Cullinan is not designed that way. It's designed for, a chauffeur. If you like buy like a Mercedes Maybach, it's designed for to be chauffeured in, or like an S-Class. So yeah, just depends. Just depends. But I love car talk. It's fun. A tank would be great. Park where you like and on top of who you don't like. Yeah, a Phantom is for chauffeur as well. I think it's only the Ghost that is more for like you actually driving the car. I believe the Brits want it because that's what the royals drive in the countryside. I think part of it is also like it's this patriotic thing, right? It's like Brits want to drive British cars. It's why Jaguars are so big in the UK and nowhere else in the world for the most part. Like most people, when they have money to buy, you know, like oh, almost kicked my mic. When they have money to buy like a supercar or whatever, instead of buying a Porsche 911 or like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, they opt for like a Jaguar F-Type R or something like that because it's British engineering. The same reason why they buy Range Rovers or Rolls Royce. It's like British. It's just the patriotic thing. So, but Jaguars and Range Rovers are now Indian owned. They are, but there are still like Jaguar and Range Rover factories in the UK. So it's more to do with like the fact that they're also like a lot of them are made in the UK. Someone says Jaguar is definitely seen as a status symbol in continental Europe as well. Is it? That's interesting. If I was rich, I would tune up Japanese vintage cars with some exteriors and renovated modern interiors. Yeah, that's an expensive hobby, but then again, you'll be rich, so it doesn't matter. At like 5 mpg by the time you're done renovating these cars that had really inefficient engines. There was I was watching this video the other day because I love Alfa Romeos. I'm a big fan. There's this guy that does resto mods of Alfa Romeos, like really old school vintage Alfa Romeos that you can't find anymore, and they cost like 300k. And it makes sense why they make 300k because building cars and making cars is so expensive, it's unreal. Especially at the start, unless you have like crazy economies of scale. So it makes sense why it'd be 300k. But I was like, damn, if I was rich, I would buy those cars in a heartbeat. Like an old school resto modded Alfa Romeo from like the 80s. That is insane. Okay, people are still talking about Jaguars. I'm literally terrified of self-driving cars. Did you guys watch that series on Netflix where the Teslas were like crashing into each other and stuff? What was that show again? I've forgotten the name of it, but that's when I think of self-driving cars, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like, what happens when a terrorist hacks into all these cars? Then what? I don't like technology that, you know, is connected to the internet and is connected to all these automated systems, you know, run by a robot. I just feel like that's a recipe for disaster. It just takes one person to hack into all of it. And everything in this world is hackable. I don't care what anyone says. Everything in this world can be hacked. Anything on the internet can be hacked by someone smart enough. So or if they just want to put resources into hacking that specific thing. So you cannot tell me that, oh, we've patched the self-driving cars and they're completely not hackable, because that's a lie. So I like engines that someone can't hack from a different country. I like mechanical things. It's like an episode of Black Mirror. Black Mirror has made me so paranoid. I'm so ignorant to cars. I'd need to bring someone else with me to the showroom to not get swindled by a dealer. I absolutely love mechanics. They're so shady. They'll just like look at your car and there's barely anything wrong, and they look at your car and they're like, oof, oh, that looks really bad. I mean, oof, where do I start? I mean, the tire pressure is bad, your brake pads are wearing out, the engine oil needs changing, and they just start making stuff up as they go so they can charge you a big fee. They just charge you a massive fee. The mechanics are so shady, it's hilarious. I hate those massive tablets in cars too. It's why I'm very anti-Tesla. I don't like Tesla interiors at all. They hurt my eyes with those massive iPad screens in the middle. I need physical buttons. Let me press stuff. When I want the temperature to go up, let me turn a knob. Cars are one of those industries where we've overcomplicated with technology to the point we overvalue it versus things like practicality. Yeah, I totally agree. Because at the end of the day, it's like cars just have to take you from point A to point B. And of course, some cars are more comfortable. Some have massaging seats, and some the suspension is nice. Some have better driving dynamics. But all the extra stuff, I don't really. It is what it is. That's why I like Alfa Romeos. It's like 50-50 weight distribution, perfect driving dynamics, and not crazy MPG that will make you go broke. It's like the perfect middle ground. The MPG of Alfa Romeos right now are also better than like Porsches and stuff. Yeah, and also, yeah, cars today don't last because of all the technology and all that sort of stuff. Open another channel about cars, Dries, please. I'll talk about Dries Van Noten in another live stream. Definitely. It's cheaper for companies to make infotainment systems with screens rather than a newly designed dash with buttons. Yeah, that's totally true. It just annoys me as a customer, like having to, tap all these strange screens all the time. It's banned to look at your smartphone. Meanwhile driving or while driving, but we have a tablet in our cars now. I know, right? And people are literally like looking away from the road, tapping at this tablet. Where's the logic in that? I think the screens are just ugly and distracting. Like, how am I supposed to focus with that next to me? I also think it ages cars really badly, right? It really ages cars because then they change the infotainment stuff and then it just makes your car look outdated. Or when the technology goes like really far, your car just looks really outdated. I had a summer romance with a dude who drove an Alfa Romeo in Germany a decade ago. Fell in love with that car. Him, not so much. Fair enough. Sorry that my love of Alfa Romeo has brought back bad memories. Yeah, they've also heavily changed materials to be lighter. Old cars were made of steel. Yeah, yeah. Just got here. What did you think of the last Dree show? IR and chat. I thought it was a great finale and closer with references from all his previous work. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it in a different stream, so I don't actually want to give you a spoiler by saying my thoughts on the Dries Van Noten show. But anyone in the chat, if you guys want to share your thoughts on Dries Van Noten's final show in fashion, definitely be my guest. Let's just have a look at a few more. Oh, jewelry. Are we going to see some more brass stuff? We love a bit of brass. Okay, they have a fine jewelry connection. Okay, fashion jewelry, bro. At least they separate it. Let's see what they're doing with the fine jewelry. Okay, so everything is made to order and price upon request. So you know that stuff is disgustingly expensive. And it looks like... Okay, this stuff is an earring with white gold and diamonds, 2.6K. That's not crazy for Prada and considering the materials used. Self-driving cars have ethical issues. Yeah, I think another reason why I like mechanical cars is like you can fix a car that has mechanical issues, but when they started doing all this like tablets and all these electronics and stuff, you can't do anything to your car and you have to take it to some mechanic that's going to charge you so much money just to fix a glitching screen. So that's what I don't that's kind Yeah, I was saying, so that's kind of part of what I don't like about it. I need to fix my touchpad. Every time I like scroll on my touchpad, sometimes it swipes me off the stream. I need to patch that at some point. Very, very strange. Tesla heard me. Tesla's like, how dare you insult our screens? How dare you? Off topic, but are you going to talk about the rickshaw? Really keen to hear your take on it. Yes, I'm going to be talking about it in one of the next streams. I definitely will be talking about the rickshaw. I want to talk about a few shows actually, like Lemaire, Rick Owens, Sakai, Dries, of course. I haven't talked about the Pharrell Williams Louis Vuitton show, the menswear one. Um, so yeah, there's a few shows that I'm going to talk about. So you just have to watch out for the streams. Stay tapped in with the streams. I think mechanical cars will become luxury goods in the next few decades. I feel like they already are. I think like people they buy those old like Porsches from like the 90s and the 2000s. Like the first Porsche 911 Turbo S sells for so much money because I think people are going back to, loving the mechanical cars and kind of working on a car and that sort of vibe. So really rich people, I know quite a few rich people that I follow on social media actually that, buy these old mechanical cars as like a novelty, or even like old BMWs. There are people that buy really old BMWs and they're really expensive. Um, so yeah. Imagine if we lost our electricity for 2 weeks. Very scary. Be back to gangs. Vintage cars before the 60s are tax exempt in the UK. I thought all cars were tax exempt. I thought that if you sell any car, obviously not as a company, but as an individual, if you sell a personal car, you don't pay any tax, even if you make a profit, because it's seen as like a personal item that loses value most of the time. So that I thought that's always been like kind of like a tax write-off. It's like always been tax exempt. Oh, Human says, oh, but I mean like a mechanical Toyota Prius would be mad expensive. Yeah, probably. I can see how that could happen, to be honest. I could see how that could happen. Did you hear about 3K Dior bags costing $57 to manufacture in China? What's your take? Yeah, I mean, I heard about it. I guess my take is the whole series that I've done on Patreon for like over the past like what 6 months, where I've basically been talking about this stuff over and over again in many different ways, or all the brands that um I've kind of bashed for having bad quality, and all the brands that I'm like, it doesn't even cost that much to make. I mean, I kind of know this stuff because once again, because I've worked in the industry, I have a very strong sense of how much stuff costs to produce, right? Um, and it's so funny because every time I say it, people gaslight me and they're like, yeah, but it's different because all this stuff is like handmade. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's made in an assembly line, like fast fashion. But people, I think it's just that thing. It's just people take it as a personal attack. They buy into this stuff and they don't want someone like me telling them that actually no, it's made the same way as fast fashion, because it hurts their soul that they're spending so much money. They have to believe that, they have to believe that it's worth it, rather than just accepting that you're just paying for the brand. They don't want to feel like they're paying for a brand. So it is what it is. Because when I buy a luxury brand, which I haven't done, but let's say if I do in the future, I'm going into it knowing that I'm buying this brand, I'm buying this bag, yes, because I like the bag, but also, you know, it's the brand. There's a there's a markup that's insane because of the brand. So I guess it's handmade depending on how you look at it. I mean, what I mean by handmade is that like a lot of them are made like on a machine, like using like certain sewing machines and like different kinds of machines. I think people think that their bags are like made in an atelier in Paris where someone is literally like hand sewing these things and stuff, which isn't the case. Because when you go on a lot of these brands, go on there after I end this stream, like go on a lot of these luxury brands and look at their YouTube pages, and they always have these funny adverts where it'll be like savoir faire, and you go and they're like, follow me as I go through the factory of Fendi, and then you have these like, oh, This is Ubet. Ubet has been sewing the seams of the handle of our bags for the past 20 years and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, who do you think you're lying to? This atelier is where you make the samples. After you're done making the samples, you ship and outsource the bags to as many places as you can because of the quantities of bags that you make. Like, who do you think you're fooling? Um, but I just find those things funny. Or they'll get like an influencer, like Brian Boy. Like, Brian Boy, come with me to the Dior atelier. Like, look at how everything is perfectly and pristinely made. It's so funny. I are going to going to have my husband, who is a leather expert and is a board member for the U.S. Government Leather and Hide Council of America. Check out those Prada bags for quality. We'll get back to you. Oh my God, that's amazing! Please, please get that done, and then let's know what the verdict is. Let's know what the verdict is. The cost to retail price difference is insane, but I mean, why would you only charge £600 for a bag when people are willing to pay 3K for it and you can get away with it? I know, right? I know, right? I know. Someone says I can't stand Brian Boy. That's funny. I just, I don't. I'm indifferent to most people. I think the thing about Brian Boy though is that I think he's a bit of a. I don't like speaking bad on people, but he's a bit of like a whore for luxury brands. Like if you follow him on Twitter, everything that he says is very much like if you critique any one runway brand or like fashion brand or luxury brand, his response if your tweet goes viral would be like, well, the women that I know buy this stuff in droves. The people that I know buy 20 pieces in one day. So you're saying that this is not that desirable, but like my friends buy 30 of these bags in one go. And I'm thinking, but bro, like, I don't care what your friends do. Their growth has gone down and the brand is struggling to grow. So clearly, whatever your friends are doing isn't really moving the needle overall with the brand. But he's trying to make a case that these brands are fine because my friends buy all the bags. And it's like, well, no, they're not fine, because if you read the financial reports, you can see that their revenues are going down quarter by quarter. But it's just like anything, anything to just defend luxury brands. He defends luxury brands with like the last bone in his body, and I don't know why. It's just kind of like weird, really, really weird. It's kind of like, yeah, I can't take anyone in fashion seriously that blindly defends luxury brands. I just once you're like that, I just can't take you seriously anymore, because it means that every brand is above critique. And have you ever heard Brian Boy critique any luxury brand, or have you ever heard Brian Boy like, for example, this Dior thing? He'll never talk about it. He'll be silent on it because he wants to go to the parties and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. The only way to interact with luxury fashion is either whoredom or total indifference. Yeah, haute couture is definitely all handmade. It has to be. It's one of the requirements for haute couture. Um, I have to specify haute couture because when we say couture, couture is just anything that's handmade, right? Or anything that's like custom made, like made to measure. So couture could mean anything. But if we're talking about like haute couture, like the where you have specific rules, you have to follow specific rules. It has to be made, a certain way. Um, yeah, then yes, it has to be handmade. It's like the Skepta song, "That's Not Me," but it's 100% him. Oh my god. Yeah, exactly. There's a definition for something to be haute couture. 100%. Then Iris Van Herpen, she makes clothes using 3D print, no handmade, but she's haute couture. Yeah, I think Iris Van Herpen gets away with it because her stuff, when she's doing like 3D printing and all that stuff, is just seen more as like new technology. And when they were obviously making the rules of what haute couture is, that all this 3D printing and stuff wasn't there. So it kind of wasn't patched. So that's it allows for gray area, which allows Iris Van Herpen to sort of do all that stuff and for it still to be considered haute couture, basically. So that's how she gets away with it. So these days, luxury brands and drop shipping guys are becoming more and more similar. I would definitely agree with you in that sense. I will certainly agree with you in that sense. But yes, thank you very much, everyone, for joining my Prada stream. It was a lot of fun talking about Prada. I shall be back very soon talking about many other different brands. We have many brands left to cover for this season. Dries Van Noten, J.W. Anderson, Loewe, Rick Owens, the list goes on. But I shall now be taking my leave. But yeah, I appreciate you guys, the Urbans, for sticking with me and sticking by the stream. And I should be seeing you guys probably tomorrow.